Before the First World War broke out in 1914, the Austro-Hungarian War Ministry had been offered several designs of armored vehicles, but all were declined. The army did not even have armored trains in use when war was declared on Serbia in late July 1914. As the war dragged on, a desire arose among troops for some armored vehicles. On rare occasions, Austro-Hungarian troops also encountered Russian armored vehicles starting from the second half of the 1915. In the same year, a new armored car was built in Budapest, although the War Ministry and Army Command were initially not involved. This car was a Romfell. Hello and welcome to another Tank Encyclopedia voiced article. I'm your host, Tony, and today I will be covering the design and use of the Romfell armored car. If you like our videos and want to support us, please consider donating on Patreon or PayPal. All of the funds will be used to improve future Tank Encyclopedia content. The initial idea for an armored vehicle came from Hauptmann Branko Romanic, commander of Kraftfahrersatzdepot No. 39 in Budapest, Hungary. More detailed plans were worked out by Oberleutnant Simon Fellner, whose names combined formed the name Romfell. Fellner was commander of the Hauptwerkstätte of the depot. Construction of one vehicle commenced in the spring of 1915. They were supported by Reserve Lieutenant Emil Videcki, former assistant professor at the Technical University of Budapest. On-site, the construction was managed by Imre Kadar, and the production itself was led by Lieutenant Agoston and Vazekas. The War Ministry was never informed about the project but became aware of it when, on the 30th of July, a formal request was made to the firm Siemens & Halske for delivery of a wireless radio with a range of 100 to 150 kilometers. The first reaction by the ministry was very negative. The conversion was seen as a waste of a perfectly fine and badly needed car. Following up, the car was inspected by Oberleutnant Erich Kurzel Elder von Rutscheiner, who was a technical consultant with the 5-M department of the War Ministry. His report was very positive, as he saw good use for military purposes and praised the craftsmanship. The chosen donor chassis was a Mercedes 37-90 PS, a chain-driven rear-wheel drive car built in 1913 to 1914. This car had a maximum speed of 115 km per hour. When the chassis was adapted to fit the armored body, relatively few changes were made, and the engine, transmission, and steering gear remained practically the same. The frame, cross-connections, spring bolts, and mounting suspensions were strengthened and reinforced to allow the chassis to bear the weight of the new armored superstructure. The engine was a 4-cylinder inline 4-stroke capable of delivering 90 to 95 horsepower. The engine had a fuel consumption of 29 to 33 liters per 100 kilometers, and only the rear wheels were driven by encapsulated chains. The Mercedes chassis weighed 1,525 kilograms, and it could carry a gross weight of 2,650 kilograms, but the Romfell with its reinforced chassis could handle a greater load. Thanks to the powerful engine, the Romfell, even with its 5 tons, could reach speeds between 28 to 40 km per hour on good roads and even up to 25 km per hour off-road, although only with favorable ground and weather conditions. Protection and layout. The whole armored body of nickel-chrome steel was designed in a way that bullets could not hit the armor at a right angle. The thickness of the armor was calculated so that 8mm Mannlicher bullets could not penetrate the armor further than 120 meters away, and pointed German S bullets further than 300 meters away. The strongest plates between 6.5 and 7mm thick were used on the sides of the body and the vertical parts of the turret, while less important parts of the chassis were armored by plates some 4.5 to 5mm thick. The crew entered the vehicle through a square and rather small hatch in the sides that opened in 2 parts. The radiator in front of the engine was protected by an armored shutter with 15 slats, so it was fairly well protected but still allowed for steady airflow. Below the shutter was an opening that accommodated a manual starting crank. 2 extrusions were present on the lower rear of the Romfell. Attached to the lowest part of the rear armored plating was a towing hook, originally fitted to tow a trailer. Slightly lower and pointing downwards was another extrusion fitted to the chassis. It consisted of 2 iron bars with a sharp edge pointing downwards and connected to each other by a horizontal bar. Attached to it was a chain, and when pulled, the contraption would lower to the ground, anchoring the vehicle if it had to stop while driving up a slope. Turret and armament. The turret was mounted slightly to the rear of the vehicle. Due to the thin armor of the roof plate, a reinforced structure had to be made to support the weight of the turret. Inside the turret were the other 2 crew members, presumably 2 gunners, or 1 gunner and a commanding officer. At the front of the turret was an opening for the M07-12 Schwarzlose machine gun. The machine gun was slightly protected from the sides by 2 extruding armored plates and had an elevation of 45 degrees and a depression of 30 degrees, while the turret itself could be turned 360 degrees. A large hatch was located on top of the turret which hinged forwards. This hatch had several functions. Most importantly, it allowed the fitting of the machine gun to a pintle mount on the rear of the turret so it could function as an anti-aircraft machine gun. The Schwarzlose M07-12 machine gun was a design from 1902 and built under license by Austrian Steyr. Presumably, the machine gun that was mounted in the Romfell had the stronger mainspring fitted, which allowed a firing rate of 580 rounds per minute, and 8,000 rounds were carried within the vehicle. Romfell into service. On 30th July 1915, the Romfell made its first test drive and was driven for 100 kilometers. In the first week of October, the vehicle took part in a large military parade held in Budapest. This show of military might was intended to support the Red Cross and was attended by a variety of Hungarian notables, including Minister of War Baron Samuel Hazai and Artillery Inspector Lieutenant General Karas. The Romfell's appearance was praised by the onlookers, and after being shipped to Vienna to be inspected by the Ministry of War, the Romfell was accepted for service. On 11th October 1915, the Romfell was issued to the 7th Army and was attached to the 36th Infantry Troops Division of the 13th Corps. This corps reported later that the vehicle saw no action in late October. The 36th Infantry Troops Division was stationed near Buzach, present-day Bukhara, Ukraine. The Romfell saw its last combat use on the Eastern Front during the Brusilov Offensive. It was withdrawn from the unit on 11th of August 1916 and transferred to the Kraftwagenwerkstätte No. 36 des Etappengruppenkommandos 9 located in Stryj. After this, the records seem to have gone silent until the Romfell reappeared in June 1917 when the car arrived in Ljubljana as it was transferred to the 5th Army. There, it was decided to replace the worn-out Mercedes chassis with the captured Italian Fiat 18BL truck. Due to this rebuild, the car changed both in terms of performance and appearance. The armor layout remained practically the same, but more noticeably was the completely changed underbody of the car and the wooden spoked wheels that were now unprotected. Thanks to the lightweight chassis and running gear of the Fiat, the total weight was reduced by 1.5 tons to 3.51 tons. Thanks to this massive decrease in weight, the M09 Goliath water-cooled petrol engine with just 44 horsepower managed to propel the vehicle to a speed of 35 km per hour. In March 1918, the Army High Command ordered the creation of armored car platoons on the Italian front, and on 1st June of 1918, the first platoon, Panzerautozug No. 1, was officially formed. The Romfell was also ordered to be included in this new platoon. Apart from the Romfell, by the end of August, the unit consisted of a former Russian Austin 3rd Series, a Junovich, a former Italian Lancia 1ZM, and a former Italian Isotta Francini. It is believed that this unit saw little to no fighting and operated behind the front line. The end of the First World War also marked the end of the vast Austro-Hungarian Empire as it was dissolved into multiple smaller states. As to be expected, each state had its own geographical wishes, which resulted in many violent border disputes between them. One such area was southeastern Carinthia, which had a mixed population of Slovenes and Germans. The Republic of German Austria, which was officially declared on the 12th November of 1918, laid claims on the area, as well as the state of Slovenes, Croats and Serbs, officially declared on the 29th of October 1918. Therefore, no border between the two new states was drawn. The last chapters of the history of the Romfell were written in this period. After the armistice was signed in 1918, the Romfell and the Austrian retreated to Carinthia to fight against the Yugoslavs. On 1st December 1918, one of the armored cars saw its first action, presumably the Romfell, during an attack on the city of Velkermark to the east of Klagenfurt. On 15th December, the complete unit saw action near Gravenstein, a small town between Klagenfurt and Velkermark. During the armistice, in a period between 1st and 14th of April, the Romfell was stationed on the road Trixen-Heimburg-Greven to the north of Velkermark in order to defend Austrian field guards and recover trucks that got stuck on or near the road. When the Yugoslavs broke the ceasefire on the 29th of April, the section saw major action. In the morning at 7:50, the armored car section advanced from Klagenfurt to the small river Gurk. After clearing the road near Heidach, they advanced to Pokersdorf, and an hour later, the armored cars advanced further to Kreuzershof. On the 2nd of May, the Romfell took part in the attack on Velkermark itself, and 2 days later, it was deployed near St. Margareten and Abtei. During the 2 following days, the Romfell saw action in the general area of Eisenkappel. On 6th of May, the car was tasked to supply a machine gun unit operating in the front line with new ammunition. This was the last reported action in which the Romfell took part. Its fate after that is unknown. From a technical point of view, the Romfell was one of the better armored cars that was built during the First World War. Although the Mercedes chassis wore down quite quickly, it was elegantly designed and aesthetically pleasing, something that could not often be said about armored vehicles of the time. The car also had some features that may be considered modern for its time, like the intentional use of sloped armor, the provision of an anti-air pintle mount, and the proposed plans for a radio. With just one vehicle produced and seeing little action, the Romfell had a negligible role in the war effort, and its successful post-war deployment in 1919 is probably the most remarkable. Thank you for joining us for our video on the Romfell armored car. If you liked it, please leave a like and subscription. You can find more information relating to this invasion in the full article, which is linked in the description. If you like what we are doing and want to let us continue working on these videos, please consider donating on Patreon or PayPal. All of the funds will be allocated to improving our articles and video for you. Until next time, keep us in your sights.